I now yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to all your witnesses, thank you. It's often said, always said, we have a crisis at the border. I think that's an enormous understatement, frankly. I don't think we have a crisis at the border. I think we have 3 crises. One of them is obviously humanitarian, something that every one of us in this room cares about. One of them is security. And the third one is political. A political crisis here in D.C. and our inability to fix this. And I think, frankly, the political crisis may be the more difficult of these to fix. And some of the rhetoric around this is, honestly, it's just cynical. Much of it is dishonest. And some of it is just intellectually lazy. There's many of us who want to fix this. For example, from the very first day I decided to run some 7 years or so ago, I've always wanted to fix DACA. I think if we had a DACA bill on the floor, we'd have 350 votes for it. And we ask ourselves, would we rather have a cynical and a political tool and do what's right for these families, for these children, and ultimately for the security of our nation? Or would we rather have a tool that use that as a bludgeon against some of our political opposition? I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. I can't even begin to imagine the concern and the stress of these families and what they must feel. And the difficulties of these individuals as they face this journey. I've been to the border, I've been to the region many times, and we see what's happening to the children and them being used. It's truly heartbreaking. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, I have voted numerous times to support the children and their parents whenever possible. I'm pro-family, and I'm also, as we've just said recently, I'm pro-legal immigration. And there's one more reality, and I want to mention this just quickly, and that's human trafficking. It's where I'd like to focus my attention out of the many elements of this crisis. I really do want to spend some time on this. We were recently told in an intel briefing, you can purchase a child to be used as a tool to cross the border for $80. $80 you can purchase a child. And some of these children, and as young as a few months, not a toddler, a few-month-old baby. And some of these children have been recycled across the border 40 and 50 times. And I just think it's our responsibility as a member of Congress to really, truly do something to fund DHS and HHS, something that we all know here is going to reach a crisis in the next few days if we don't have adequate funding for that. Mayor, I'd like to spend some time with you, if I could, and see your personal experience in the responsibilities you have in the city of Yuma. Have you seen, have your citizens seen elements of these trafficking of children or other, sex trafficking or other human trafficking?
Thank you, Congressman. We have seen some evidence of it through the shelter system where people have had plans to go to their host family with tickets purchased, and then a truck pulls up and they get in the truck and they leave, which is not a usual thing you would do if you're trying to get to a host family. And that's evidence of trafficking. That the struggle on trafficking is it's not something you can just walk into and understand that that's going on at that moment. It takes a lot of research, and ICE right now is overwhelmed in the number of cases that they're researching. But it does go on, and as far as the recycling of the children, there's quite a bit of work done at the Border Patrol station to try to identify whether the children are associated with the parents' units that they're with. Sometimes by the time they get to the shelter, that still hasn't been determined. So there's always that concern. As people leave the shelter, we're not sure really where their ultimate situation is when they get to wherever they're going. So very, very few migrants actually stay in the Yuma community. They come through and they move through.
So let me ask you, as a mayor who's responsible for law enforcement in your community, do you have the resources that are necessary to combat trafficking, or do you need help from the federal government on this?
We do not. We need help with from ICE and the different federal agencies.
I mean, that's just obvious, isn't it? This is beyond your capability. I hear that again and again and again in local communities. This is beyond the capabilities of our local law enforcement to deal with adequately.
And it reaches outside of jurisdiction, because that kind of crime goes across boundaries.